There's a chapter in the Quran named after Israel. Not a verse, an entire chapter. Inside it, God makes a decree, written before these events ever existed, that Israel would rise, corrupt, and fall, then rise again, corrupt again. Surah Al-Isra, verse 4, twice, both times, history confirmed it. Now scholars are asking a question that's harder to ignore than ever. Is there a third? And are we already watching it unfold? Most people hear the word Israel and think of a country, a flag, a border, a conflict on the news. The Quran isn't talking about any of that. In the Quran, Israel is a man, a prophet named Jacob, and his descendants, the children of Israel, became one of the most documented communities in all of sacred scripture. Not just in the Quran, in the Torah, in the Bible. Across 3 world religions, this same group appears at the center of divine history. The Quran calls them chosen, favored, entrusted with prophets and scripture that most communities never received. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 47. O children of Israel, remember my favor that I have bestowed upon you, and that I preferred you over the worlds. But that favor had conditions. But here's what nobody tells you about that favor. It came with a warning so specific, it described exactly what would destroy them, step by step. Before they ever committed the act, God didn't just warn them once. He wrote it down, exactly what they would do, exactly what would follow. In a chapter called Al-Isra, named after the night journey to Jerusalem by Prophet Muhammad. Before the events existed, chapter 17, verse 4, the first thing God says to the children of Israel isn't a greeting, it's a verdict. And God describes not just what they would do, but exactly what would follow because of it. Surah Al-Isra, verse 5. So when the time of the first promise came, we sent against you servants of ours, those of great military might, and they entered the innermost parts of your homes, and it was a promise fulfilled. Pay attention to that phrase, servants of ours. It doesn't mean righteous people. It doesn't mean believers. Islamic scholars point out that God uses this term for any instrument he wills. Muslim, Christian, pagan, anyone. The Babylonians weren't worshiping Allah. The Romans weren't either, but they were still sent. That's the weight of this verse. Divine justice doesn't wait for a righteous army. It works through history itself. History has names for this moment. The Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Romans. Wave after wave of empire marching into Jerusalem, tearing down what was built, scattering the people. The Quran said it would happen. It happened. But then, something most people never expect, God gave them another chance. Surah Al-Isra, verse 6. Then we gave back to you a return of victory over them, and we reinforced you with wealth and sons and made you more numerous in manpower. Here is where scholars have never fully agreed. Who is the you God is speaking to in this verse? One interpretation, it refers to the children of Israel themselves, who regrouped, rebuilt, and reclaimed power after the Babylonian exile. A second interpretation, it refers to the Muslim believers, specifically the moment in the 7th century when Umar ibn al-Khattab led the Islamic conquest of Jerusalem, ending centuries of Roman control. Under his rule, the city opened to all faiths for the first time in generations. A third interpretation, this verse hasn't fully played out yet. that the final restoration still awaits. 3 readings, 1 verse. And scholars have debated this for 14 centuries? The Quran doesn't just warn, it restores. Mercy after punishment, but only as a bridge to what comes next. Because the decree had 2 parts, and the second is where it gets uncomfortable. You want to know what uncomfortable looks like? Turn on the news. What you're watching right now, scholars have been describing it for 14 centuries. The first corruption ended in exile. The children of Israel returned, rebuilt. For a time, the covenant held. Then it broke again. Some scholars, particularly those writing in the last century, point to 1948, the return of Jewish people after 2,000 years of exile, the establishment of a modern state, the displacement of hundreds of thousands, the occupation that continues today. And these same scholars ask, does this fit the pattern described in verse 8 of Surah Al-Isra? A people rising with arrogance, entering the land the same way they entered it the first time, destroying what stood before them. The Quran doesn't name a date, it describes a pattern. And that pattern, whether you're Muslim, Jewish, or simply watching the news, is impossible to look away from. But the verse doesn't end with destruction. Then it ends with something that silences every debate. In Surah Al-Isra, verse 8, perhaps your Lord will have mercy upon you. Perhaps. Not a guarantee. Not a punishment without exit. A door left open by the same God who wrote the decree. And then, immediately after that mercy, a warning that resets everything. But if you return to sin, we will return to punishment. Surah Al-Isra, verse 8. The cycle isn't broken by power. It isn't broken by land. Only one thing has ever broken it: justice. Here's what makes this chapter unlike any other prophecy in Scripture. It doesn't end with them. At the close of Surah Al-Isra, the Quran turns the camera around. If you do good, you do good for yourselves. If you do evil, you do it to yourselves. Surah Al-Isra, verse 7. That line wasn't written for the children of Israel alone. It was written for every nation that ever held power and had to decide what to do with it. The Quran uses Bani Israel not as a villain, but as a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. Every empire that rose with arrogance fell. Every nation that chose occupation over justice faced its reckoning. We've seen what justice looks like in this story. When Umar ibn al-Khattab entered Jerusalem in 637 AD, after centuries of Roman exclusion, he refused to pray inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. He said, "If I do, Muslims will turn it into a mosque." So he prayed outside, a conqueror who protected what he conquered. That moment became a model, not because of power, because of principle. The Quran wasn't describing it as the only model. It was holding it up as proof that another way is possible. This isn't a warning about who they are. It's a warning about what unchecked power without justice always produces in any nation, any era, any faith. So the real question was never just about Israel. It was always about this. When a people are given power, what do they choose to do with it? Because according to the Quran, that choice is the only thing that has ever determined the fate of nations, and it always will.